Hi, I'm Carl Franklin. In this episode of Blazor Train, Dan Roth comes back to show you how to build mobile apps with Blazor. That's right, I said mobile and Blazor in the same sentence. Turns out there are a few options, one of which was completely new to me. So let's get started with Daniel Roth right now, right here on Blazor Train! All right, I have with me Daniel Roth from Microsoft, and yes, that is his name. You can see if I move myself out of the way, Daniel Roth. Of course, he's Mr. Blazor on the ASP.NET Core team. I don't know, is that your official title, Mr. Blazor?
If it's not, it should be.
Captain Blazor.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us the state of mobile Blazor.
Yeah, so, there's stuff that you can do with mobile and Blazor today. And there's stuff that we're working on for the future. I mean, Blazor primarily is a web UI framework. We built Blazor for building web applications, particularly for handling your client-side browser concerns.
Right.
And we've always had a great story for that on the server, but on the client, you had to write JavaScript, and now you can use Blazor for that. And that's really what Blazor was primarily about, is filling that gap with client-side browser logic. Be able to use .NET for that instead of JavaScript. But that said, there are things that we do think about with mobile. Like if you have a web application, you probably are interested in taking it to the mobile world in some way, potentially, if you want to take advantage of native capabilities of the device.
Right.
You probably just want a presence there in general. And it's kind of interesting question. How can you leverage your web skills, your .NET skills, in order to write mobile apps? And there's a number of different ways you can do that. Some of them involve using more web tech. Some of them all involve using more native tech. And I thought I'd give you a broad overview of the different options that are available to you.
Yeah, and I think also if you're like me, you've spent a lot of time learning Blazor and you love the component model and you love all the things that make you more productive in Blazor. And then, somebody says, hey, you should make that a mobile app. And you think, what's the easiest way to use that create a mobile app? Probably a lot of people have maybe tried Xamarin in the past, which it's been on a shall we say, an upward trajectory in terms of features and usability. But
it's an evolving product. It has an exciting future coming in .NET 6 with the MAUI work. We can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if the simplest thing, obviously, to get your Blazor app on mobile is just run it as a mobile web application. And for many apps, that's perfectly fine. You just design a responsive UI, and then you just use it from a mobile browser. Like the ultimate cross-platform application for desktop, web, and mobile is a web app. The Blazor templates come prepared for that out of the box. They use Bootstrap for mobile-friendly styling. Of course, the downside of that is that you're going to be constrained by the browser, right? You can only do what the web platform can do. The web platform's gotten really rich over the years, and there are many apps I think that would be sufficient. Like GitHub comes to mind. For years, if you wanted to use GitHub on a phone, all they offered was their web client, and it was just a mobile rendering, mobile design of their web application. But you could browse issues, and you could look at code and all that stuff. It was only recently that they finally, I guess, decided, caved in and said, we really need a native application. And they finally built a native GitHub app. For a long time, it was just the web.
There's just some things you can't do. And even with PWA, there's just some things that are off limits to you. So this is...
Yeah, you mentioned PWA. I think that's worth giving some attention to. I should give a shout out here to Blazor Server in particular for mobile. Blazor Server might be a really attractive solution for mobile web apps because you can target much lower end devices by offloading a lot of work to the server. All the smarts and logic are being handled by your components running on .NET Core on the server, and you're just treating the mobile device as a very thin client. Blazor WebAssembly works too, but then you have to download a little more, and you're asking a little bit more of the device. PWAs are still a great option. They'll give you a native feel. You can install them, you can function offline, And you can do push notifications. Like a lot of the PWA features, they're still web platform features, but they enable your app to feel like it's a native app in a lot of ways that web apps haven't been able to do in the past.
Right.
So I think that's a valid option to consider as well. But you're still running in the browser. It's still fundamentally a web app. It's just starting to look and feel more like a native application.
Yeah.
PWAs, I think, are a great option, and we help you with that in Blazor WebAssembly. We have template options for building progressive web apps, and we'll set you up with all the needed artifacts. You need a web manifest to set up whatever icon you want or any colors you want for your native Chrome. It needs to be HTTPS. We use HTTPS by default in ASP.NET Core, and we give you a service worker that's set up both for local development. And also for when you publish the app, it'll actually handle the offline caching of the app. I actually have an application that Steve Sanderson wrote a while back. Let me switch to that. This is the car checker app. You've probably seen this one. I think we showed this at the .NET Conf last year. Yep. This is supposed to be an app that you would use if you're like a rental car company and you're an attendant receiving the vehicles out in the parking lot, and so you can quickly like search for a car. And we have a nice autocomplete drop down box, and then you got the 3D rendering of the car, and you can put in the new mileage and how much the gas tank is at, and look at all the damage that the car had previously. And
that 3D rendering is the coolest part of this app. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's actually JavaScript, right? That's 3D.js that's being used through JavaScript interop in the Blazor application. But you can do stuff like that. Like if there's existing libraries, you can absolutely do that. You can add a note here, say the front wheel is completely missing. How do they even drive that car? And there's a picture. Like, oh my goodness. Okay, so like this
comes back with a wheel.
Yeah, and we can save that. So this is a full desktop web application right now, but we can use it bring it up our Android emulator and use that same application as just a standard web application on the mobile device. This one happens to be Blazor WebAssembly. We should be able to see the same car, and there's that same problem with that wheel that it's completely missing and so forth. So that's just a normal web app. Yeah. And then to use this as a PWA, this is all set up correctly. It's been published, so we can go ahead and add this to the home screen. Android has, all the modern platforms have a integration with PWAs. And get rid of the browser now, and there's our progressive web app showing up on the home screen. Go ahead and open that up, and now it's no longer got the browser Chrome. It actually looks like a native app and has some more native app-like functionality. If we go back to car, actually before I even go to the car, I'm going to just turn on airplane mode and get rid of the network. I can pull this down all the way. Yeah, there we go. Let's clear that. So now we shouldn't be able to access the network, but I can still browse for cars because all the data for the cars is being stored locally using IndexedDB. I can still make edits. Like let's say this was not something we actually want, or maybe the mileage is different or whatever. Save that. You can see at the bottom, the app tried to sync that back up to the cloud, to the server, but it couldn't because there's no network. That's like you're out in the parking lot, mobile network's not great. We come back into the network when we go back to the office, then we can retry. And now it's all synced up correctly. If we go back to the main desktop version of the app, that should all be good now. And
nice,
new mileage and so forth. So that's one way to build a mobile app, is just use web tech, and that's perfectly valid. It has the limitations though that you can only do as much as the web platform will let you.
Right.
Yeah. So then probably the next click stop then is, well, now we want a native app, right? Like we want to use Xamarin or some sort of native technology so we can fully leverage the device. Like I want to call into native APIs. I want to run natively on the machine. Anything the device can do, I want to be able to do. And like you said earlier, Xamarin is the .NET solution for running .NET code on mobile, cross-platform on Android and iOS. You can even write cross-platform UI using XAML as like a UI abstraction across those devices, and that's great. That's a great solution. But if you're a web developer, you may not know XAML. Like that may not be your thing. You may also have existing UI from your web apps that you want to reuse and have it be consistent across your mobile application. And so this is where we think like pairing Xamarin with Blazor together can be a really nice solution for specifically web developers that are trying to move into the native space. Like those folks at GitHub, they started out with a nice web app and now they want to have either a desktop app or a mobile application. How can they reuse their skills, not only with .NET, but also with HTML and CSS and their existing code for their websites in order to build those native applications? And there's a couple options here of different things you could do to build a native app with this pairing. The first one is to take a Blazor WebAssembly app, zip it up as like a embedded resource, and just package it inside of a native application, and then render it in a web view. That's kind of like a Cordova style app or an Ionic style application, but where you've basically taken a web app and packaged it up inside of a native application. You can do that with Blazor as well. You can then access native functionality from the device by punching out of that web view, by using platform-specific JavaScript APIs to call native functionality that is available to your native application that's wrapping the web app. And with Blazor, you can do that. You can do that using our JavaScript interop facilities. And there's actually a nice community project called Blazor Mobile. It's written by a gentleman named Guillaume Zara, I think is how you pronounce his name.
Dadoon.
Dadoon, that's right. Yeah. So his packages and templates will handle bundling up your Blazor WebAssembly app and putting it into a Xamarin Forms application for you and help you with the bridge between the stuff running in the web view and the stuff running outside. So this is kind of what that looks like.
I want to study this because this is the first I've heard of this one. This is different from the experimental mobile Blazor bindings, right?
This is a community project. This is not from the Blazor team proper, but it's a valid approach. And the thing that I think is interesting about it is everything about this approach is shipped and available right now. Like the pieces are all there. If you want to do this today, you can. You're not waiting on any experimental project to become fully supported or for work to happen in .NET 6 and things like that. This is just normal Blazor WebAssembly app and a normal Xamarin Forms app using facilities that native mobile apps already have available.
So you have, if Xamarin Forms is in here, are we using the Blazor markup or the Xamarin Forms markup?
Well, when you wrote the little box in the middle, like this Blazor WebAssembly app that's kind of in the web view, that piece was all written with Razor, right? Like you wrote Razor syntax and wrote normal web UI components. Okay. And then you just took that Blazor WebAssembly app and you publish it, and then you zip it up as a bunch of static files, and you embed that as a static resource inside a Xamarin Forms application.
I get it. So the Xamarin Forms application is what gives, it's like the shell. It gives you access to the native aspects of the phone that Xamarin Forms gives you. So in a very
indirect way, because for the Blazor WebAssembly code to access that native functionality, well, it's sitting inside of a web view. Like it's running on WebAssembly. It's not running on the Xamarin's .NET runtime. That's the thing that's a little awkward about this setup, right? You have two .NETs sitting in here. You've got the Xamarin .NET runtime, and then you have the WebAssembly .NET runtime, both simultaneously being used in the same app. And so the Blazor code has to call the JavaScript, to call some web view specific API, to call some API that's being exposed by the native app to the web view.
That's actually brilliant. And it kind of sounds a lot like what the original, Cordova phone gap kind of reminds me of that.
Very similar model. Like if you squint at the Blazor app and just think, that's really just JavaScript, right? It's just fancy JavaScript.
Right.
Then the model is almost identical.
Yeah.
And you can do this today. Like I have a example of one of the. Let me bring up the repo just quick so people know where this is at. This is the project Blazor Mobile. So Dadoon, is the GitHub username of the gentleman who built this, and he has a nice. Template that you just install the Blazor mobile templates, and you'll have the templates available from the CLI. I went ahead and did that and built his app, and that would be, let me bring that up here. So go home screen. That's this Blazor mobile app. So this will look like the standard Blazor template, but augmented a little bit to take advantage of some native functionality. So there's the loading dot, right? That you immediately know, oh, this is Blazor WebAssembly now, right?
Right.
You see the loading.
and so this could go be submitted to the App Store like a regular Xamarin Forms app, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Lots of apps are built using exactly this pattern. In this case, you're just doing it with .NET. So there's our counter. That's all working. But there's also in the templates that Blazor Mobile provides, there's this page where there's a button that you click on it, and this will actually punch out of the web view to call a native API to surface. This is a native dialog in Android, and letting you know, like, oh, yeah, I know I'm running on Android here because you can detect that.
Wow.
Because you're running in a native app. So that's an option today. That's available right now. You can go try out Guillaume's Blazor mobile project. The code, I'll show you the code real quick. And it looks a little involved, but that's because that same app can target, all sorts of stuff. He's got Android. Sure. Here's the actual Blazor WebAssembly app. This is the an ASP.NET Core server that you can use to host the same Blazor WebAssembly app. It's not used, I think, in the mobile app. It's just there for your web application as well. You got iOS and UWP, all the stuff that Xamarin supports targeting, you can use with this pattern. And then if we go look in the Android application, I think is the easiest place to see this. Yeah, right here. You can see there's this web application factory that's looking for the package that contains your Blazor WebAssembly app. And I'll just F12 on that to go in here. And here's this little helper that's, basically going to go look for this zip file. And he provides some MS build, glue that will take the Blazor WebAssembly app, turn it into this zip file, put it in the right spot so that this embedded resource resolution logic can go find it and then render it into the web view.
Now, here's a question. Because you're using Blazor, can you use third-party Xamarin controls with this model, or are you going to stick to Blazor controls?
So there's basically one control where the Blazor stuff is being rendered, and that's a single web view.
All right.
If you wanted to have XAML stuff, like other native stuff around that web view or on different pages that are implemented in XAML, all done with Xamarin Forms, you can do that. Absolutely. Okay. I don't think he sets that up by default. Oh no, there's here's app.xaml, right? Let me see. Here's the components, Blazor application. I think this is the piece that's actually going to pick up the Blazor WebAssembly app and put it in a web. So there's another option that we've been working on for putting Blazor in a native mobile application, and that's what we call the experimental mobile Blazor bindings. So this is a way that you can actually run the Blazor components on the native .NET support in Xamarin. You're running your components natively, and then they talk to a web view through a local interop channel. So you still have a web view, like with Blazor Mobile, but instead of your components running on WebAssembly, they're now running outside the web view and then just handling the UI interactions from the web view and pushing in any DOM updates that need to be rendered.
So it's very
much like Blazor. It's got some similarities to both. With Blazor Server, it's conceptually like the architecture is actually closer. It's just that the channel of communication, that interop channel, is a WebSocket that can stretch across the internet.
Right.
Here with mobile Blazor bindings, that interop channel is right there in the app, like it's local on the device. But it's still a web view. It's still Blazor web components, like you're using HTML and CSS to author UI logic for a mobile app. You can access native functionality, but now the native functionality is right at your fingertips. Like you're already running on the native .NET stuff that Xamarin provides, so you can just call .NET APIs directly to access native functionality. You don't have to jump through Java in this model.
Right. It's essentially Xamarin Forms using the Blazor component model to do your UI.
Yep.
You're still calling like a stack layout instead of a select, right? You're using the Xamarin Forms controls instead of HTML controls, right?
So it's actually both. It does both. So the other thing that we did do in mobile Blazor bindings is I think what you're referring to, which is we created Blazor components that wrap in some sense the Xamarin Forms components. So you can write not only web UI, which is what you would render to like a web view, but you could also do the same type of stuff that you would do in XAML. Like if you wanted to create a native button or a native stack panel or whatever, but do it in Razor syntax, Mobile Blazor Bindings has been exploring that area as well. In some of my earlier presentations, I called that model like Blazor native. You're using Blazor's component model, but with native controls. That one's very akin to like React Native.
Right.
In React Native, you're using a syntax that looks like HTML and styling syntax that looks like CSS, but it's all being mapped to native controls of the underlying platform. We're looking at that as well. I think we'll be doing hybrid first. Hybrid's where you're still using HTML and CSS, but embedded in a native application. But in the future, we hope to do that Blazor native style approach as well.
Well, no, you talked about the future. You said the F word. We should say that this is experimental. It was never a product, and it shouldn't be treated as a product. And in fact, everything that you've seen up to this point is going to change come November, isn't it?
Yeah, we have some stuff that where we plan to take our learnings from the Mobile Blazor Bindings project and make it for reals, like make it product. But let me show you what Mobile Blazor Bindings is still interesting to play with. And we put out these experimental projects because we want people to try it out so that we can get those learnings. So we know what we actually want to do. I have the link down below for where you can find this project. And here's the same sort of diagram for Mobile Blazor Bindings. So you can compare it to Mobile Blazor, Blazor
Only
Mobile,
one
sorry.
.NET.
Only one .NET. That's right. You're running right there natively on the machine. Your components. It's simpler in some ways, right? Like you don't have as many moving parts. And so if you want to call a native API, you can, and then you push DOM updates into the web view and receive the UI event notifications from the web view. But in the hybrid model, your UI is still HTML and CSS. There is also a capability where you could write Razor components and have those rendered native controls. That's not really shown in this diagram. I was more focused on the hybrid aspects.
All right.
But let me show you an app, what that looks like. Let me show you a Mobile Blazor Bindings app. I'm going to open up another solution. This one, Blazor Hybrid. And I'll pop over also to the repo so everyone knows where it's at. When you type in aka.ms/Mobile Blazor Bindings, you should end up here. Okay. And all the getting started instructions are listed below. Here's that example of that native UI that you were talking about, like a stack layout, but the markup here is Razor syntax instead of a XAML syntax. To get started with this, you just go to the docs. I'll show you there's a link at the bottom. And then you go and install the Mobile Blazor Binding templates, and then you can just .NET new a new project.
Great.
When you do that, you'll get something that looks like this. Again, it's got a bunch of projects because it's all based on Xamarin Forms. Let me zoom in a bit so you can see. We can target Android, iOS. We can target desktop platforms, Mac and Windows, all with a single code base. The code for this application, instead of living in like a separate Blazor WebAssembly project, it just lives in the core Xamarin Forms project. So here we have a mix of Razor in a Xamarin Forms app, which is kind of interesting. Here's the main page, and we have some components here that are native controls like stack layout and native label and native button. And then down below, we have a specific native control that's a Blazor web view. So this is a web view, but specifically designed to render Blazor web UI components. And we're rendering this app component. And this app component is just embedded in, it's just part of the Xamarin Forms app. If we go look in the web UI folder, this whole folder here is now, that's just basically the Blazor default template, right?
That's your app, essentially.
Yep. Yeah. So you write your UI in Razor that way. And if we run that app, it looks like this. Let me get rid of Blazor Mobile and let me pop up Blazor Hybrid. This is a Mobile Blazor Bindings app. Mm-hmm. All right. So this is kind of fun because it's the bottom half, that's the web view. That's the Blazor web view. And it's got HTML and CSS stuff happening, right? Mm-hmm. And we can go see the counter and we can click the counter and it goes up. Up above this little bit, that's native UI. Like that's the native stack layout and native label and the native button. And I can click that button and the counter goes up. And you can see the state is being shared. Like I can share .NET state across the native UI and the web UI. So you can have an app that has a mixture of native components, web UI components, but still using the same backing .NET logic and state to drive them both.
Okay.
And what's really cool is I think this is a pretty compelling idea, because you can now take your web app, put it into a mobile app, and it's the same components. Like, you can use exactly the same Blazor web UI components unchanged in a mobile Blazor binding app with that Blazor web view, and get your app now on desktop, mobile, and web. That card checker app that you saw previously, there was a gentleman, Jan William, I think is how you pronounce his name, this fellow right here, who took Steve Sanderson's card checker app and updated it to use mobile Blazor bindings, so that it had both not only the web app version, but also a desktop and mobile versions of the same application. So here's the full solution that Jan William put together. This is the server part. So this is an ASP.NET Core backend for the app. This has got the web APIs and handles auth tokens, stuff like that. And then we have the client. This is a Blazor WebAssembly version of that same of the card checker UI. And then we have all of the Xamarin Forms native targets, so Android, iOS, Mac, and Windows. Down below, I got so many of these things now. Down below is the shared libraries, and this is where actually all of the card checker UI code is currently living. Let's go look at those. Like, all the Razor files are in here. Right? This is all the card checker UI that's just literally being referenced and reused by all of these clients for Android, web, iOS, Mac, and Windows.
Sure.
All right, so let's go see that app running on Android. I've got it already installed here. So there's card checker.
Okay.
This is a mobile Blazor bindings version of card checker, where the components are going to be running natively with Xamarin's .NET implementation on this device. And so there it is, the same apps, a native application. We can search for stuff and find that same car. And there's our wheel again that's completely missing. So that's all working. And it doesn't just work on mobile. You can also do desktop as well. So we have a Windows version. Let me set that as the startup project, and let's run that version. This is actually using a WPF backend for Xamarin Forms, but same app, but now running on in a native Windows application on my machine. So we got mobile, we got desktop. Let's put that down here, and then let's get web up top like that. So there it is. Mobile, desktop, and web, all running natively cross-platform with Blazor. So that's mobile Blazor bindings.
I know that everything under the hood sort of changed, but did the markup change? In other words, did the Blazor code change at all?
Let me go back to this solution, because that's really important. So this shared project, this card checker project, where all the components are for the sync status and the vehicle editor, all that stuff is the same exact project that's being referenced by the Android app, the Windows app, the Mac version, iOS, the web application, unchanged code. It's literally the same code for all those applications.
But it's not different from a standard Blazor application, right?
Right. It's literally the web version that Steve wrote originally, just factored into a Razor class library so that it could be shared.
Wow. That's fantastic.
But you could do things that are different. Like you might want to put code in a component that lights up because it's now running on a native device. Like you would check, like if I'm running on Android, well, in this case, I want to do this very Android specific things. Those types of patterns are now possible with mobile Blazor bindings. But you can just use any web UI component as is, untouched, in a mobile Blazor binding application, and it will just work.
Wow. So you could literally take a Blazor application that I've been writing for the last couple of years, just refactor all that stuff, as you say, into a Razor class library, and then with Blazor mobile bindings, I almost said Blazor bindings. That was with Blazor mobile bindings, you can package that up into a pure native application and put it in the App Store. That's insanely cool. So
that's experimental.
Why mess with that? I mean, that works. It's good. Now, all right, go ahead. Tell me about Maui.
Yeah. Well,
what's better about Maui?
Yeah, so a couple problems with mobile Blazor bindings right now. One is that it's experimental, right? It's not actually shipped and supported and done. Second is that it's currently built on Xamarin Forms, and Xamarin Forms is kind of separate right now from the .NET platform. Like we just shipped .NET 5, but you can't currently use a .NET 5 library in a Xamarin Forms app because Xamarin Forms doesn't yet support all of the .NET 5 API surface area.
Okay.
That is what's getting resolved in .NET 6 and with MAUI. So in MAUI, you can think of MAUI as like the next evolution of Xamarin Forms. We're going to take Xamarin Forms. It'll support mobile like it does today. It will also be expanded to support desktop platforms. So you can write one app, one UI once and have it target iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows using a MAUI application. It will target .NET 6. It will support .NET 6, so you can use any .NET 6 library and .NET 5 libraries from your MAUI application. This is the future of cross-platform UI for .NET. Multi-platform app UI is what MAUI stands for. And so you should start to see previews pretty soon if you haven't already seen them already.
Okay. And so the big thing is that instead of using XAML like we would in WPF, we're going to be using a flavor of XAML that is essentially Windows, what Xamarin Forms is essentially now. But we're going to be using that everywhere, not just in Xamarin Forms.
For those cases where you care about cross-platform, like if you want an app that's going to run across all those different platforms, then this is the XAML for you, I guess, that we would say.
Yeah.
If you're a WPF developer and you're writing for Windows and you don't care about Mac, then you should feel free to keep writing WPF. WPF will be part of .NET 6 as well, as will WinForms. Like if you're doing WinForms development and you only care about Windows, that's perfectly fine. It's only when you care about cross-platform that this model becomes really relevant and important.
Now, the big question is, what happens to my Blazor applications once MAUI is out there?
Yeah. So MAUI enables one thing. Like we can't actually move mobile Blazor bindings forward onto .NET 5 yet because Xamarin Forms doesn't support .NET 5. Once MAUI is available, we can start taking the work from the mobile Blazor bindings project and productizing it on top of MAUI. And that's what we're working on right now. So with MAUI and Blazor, you will be able to write hybrid native applications, mobile apps, desktop apps that use a mixture of web and native UI for writing the user interfaces for those applications. They'll have native access to the APIs of the device, just like you would expect from Xamarin Forms, except now with MAUI. And you'll be able to do not only mobile, like we have with mobile Blazor bindings, but also desktop. The desktop stuff in mobile Blazor bindings, like I said, it was using the WPF backend for Xamarin Forms, which doesn't really technically even have an official support policy. It's more of a community best effort type of project. With MAUI, that will become a part of the cross-platform UI story for .NET.
Wow. So .NET 6, November 2021, coming this year. MAUI, basically, now I have a choice of writing an app that runs everywhere, and I can either use the MAUI XAML, or I can use the Blazor component model. Either one will compile down to a MAUI app that'll run everywhere, right?
Yeah, and you can mix them. Like you could use both. And how do you make that choice? Will probably heavily depend on, well, what's your background in? Do you know XAML, or you're a web developer? Regardless of where you're coming from, what skills you have, there's a story in MAUI so that you can be productive. You can use your web skills, your web code. You can use your XAML skills and your Xamarin Forms-based code in the MAUI world. So
another question. Third-party developer tools that come from these companies, such as DevExpress, for Xamarin, will they be able to move those forward as MAUI controls? And what happens to their existing Xamarin Forms controls?
Yeah, that's a great question. As part of the rebranding from Xamarin Forms to MAUI is one way to think about it. Like there's a rename happening there, and there's a modernization of the platform. There is an upgrade that you need to do to get your Xamarin Forms code to run on MAUI, like namespaces will likely change. Like will likely shifts a little bit the APIs around, but it should be still a fairly mechanical process. And there's lots of discussions about how can we make that as easy as possible. Like, is there tooling? Is there whatever? The goal is that it should be trivial to move forward your Xamarin Forms app and controls onto MAUI, but it won't be binary compatible, I believe is the current plan.
Sure.
Like, you will need to make changes in order to get stuff running on MAUI, but it shouldn't be overly onerous.
All right, so that brings me to this slide right here. And if you can see this, my sponsor, DevExpress, is offering their current Xamarin Forms controls free right now. If you go to devexpress.com/free Xamarin, and they wanted me to send that out there. Right. I mean, you have to decide whether these are going to be valuable to you. But if you are doing Xamarin Forms and you want to take them for a spin and actually use them for free, go get them. Dan, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Back to you in the studio, Carl. Oh, sorry. I was surfing in MAUI. Yeah, MAUI sounds like a very powerful platform, but that isn't going to stop me from building mobile apps with Blazor today. I think I'll get started right now. I'm going to build an app that somehow gets rid of unwanted pests. I heard that. Wish me luck. Hey, thanks for riding the rails with me today. This is where I jump off. I'll see you next time. Blaze a trail!